Hey everybody, how are you? This is Steve Fahey. I'm one of the buyers here at the Wine Library, and I am thrilled and honored to be able to tell you about the wines of Benjamin Romeo. He is Bodega Contador, and I had the pleasure and the honor of being able to sit and taste with him last month. I got invited to come into Manhattan, and I tasted his new releases from Bodega Contador. So today's video, in a sense, is not a tasting video per se, but I will share with you my impressions from the wines that I tasted with him. And I'm going to focus on 3 different wines from his epic 2010 vintage. First and foremost, Benjamin Romeo, Bodega Contador. Who is he? He is the son of a farming family from Rioja in Spain, and he is credited with having taken one of Spain's most famous wineries, Artadi, from co-op to cult status in a very short period of time. That was him. That was his winemaking genius. He's a very humble, hard-working Spanish man whose basic affinity to the vine and his brilliance shines through in all the wines that he makes. There's a purity, there's a power, and there's a sublime character. And he likens it to the power of the earth and to nature. I liken it to somebody who has been so in tune with how wine should be made from the soil to the glass. There's very few winemakers that I will speak this highly of. He is a biodynamic practicing winemaker, so he has very, very little intervention with how the wines are made. Most of his wines are actually free-run juice. Another aspect of his genius is really about the cooperage that he uses. He's very, very attuned to the types of barrels that are specific not only to the wines, and I'll talk about 3 of them today, not only to the types of wines, but to the vintage itself. If the vintage is more robust and powerful, he'll tweak his barrel selection for that. And he does that every single year. If the vintage is a little bit milder and softer, he'll make the adjustments in the barrels as well. Many times he's using different types of barrels for the same exact wine. That's important, not only because it speaks to why these wines are, in essence, a little bit pricier, they're an investment in what's happening in Spain today and in Europe. His approach to making wine and his philosophy is, in essence, changing the landscape of what we know as cult collectibles as we know it today. So, I've spoken a lot about him and Benjamin Romeo. When I tasted through his wines, there are 3 wines in particular that I'm going to actually focus on. The first one is La Cueva del Contador. La Cueva del Contador is actually a blend of several different vineyards in the villages around his hometown. And it's in essence considered sort of like a mini Contador. And I'll get to Contador in a second. It's the first wine that he made, La Cueva del Contador, in 1996. The wine is not only kaleidoscopic in its flavors, but it's elegant and refined and pure at the same time. You can read the reviews that other people have written. I thought the wine was stunning, to say the least. The second wine is actually a little bit of a different animal. This is La Viña de Andrés, and Andrés Romeo is actually Benjamin's father. So this wine is made in actuality in homage to his father, who planted this vineyard, La Liendo, in I think the 1980s, early 1980s. Single vineyard, much more elegant, more feminine, more passionate. I found a real spirit and a real passion to this wine that was almost as elegant and transparent as glass. Beautiful color. And the third wine I want to tell you about, which most people have already known about, is their flagship wine. It's their most powerful wine, El Contador itself. This is a game-changing kind of experience. Palate-drenching, powerful, crackling fruit. It was first made in 1999. Before he even left Artadi, he was making these wines. But Luis Gutierrez, who is now with the Wine Advocate, called this wine in a previous vintage Rioja's greatest wine. And having tasted it, was just, quite frankly, floored. One final wrap-up about these wines and what makes them probably more special than most any other collectible I've seen in my career is the vintage. 2010 is epic by all definitions. 2010 was phenomenal in Rioja, Ribera del Duero, Priorat. Hell, it was famous in Burgundy and Bordeaux and Rhone Valley. This is the kind of vintage that you invest in. This is the kind of vintage that you don't be afraid to buy. I've had the wines. They'll change you. They humbled me. So don't miss this opportunity, I beg you. These 3 wines in particular, and there'll be other wines that you will see from this winemaker that anything he touches is going to turn you to a real believer. So, having said that, definitely take a look at the offer. Absolutely give yourself an opportunity to get these wines, and maybe we can have a glass together someday. Cheers.